Discover your inner goddess and live up to your highest value and most abundant potential. Welcome to Grateful Goddesses, a podcast that empowers you to unleash your inner goddess and take the leap of faith to live your best life. Your guide, Karen Pulver, joins her fellow goddesses in soulful conversations about gratitude, personal growth, authentic living, and a bevy of topics affecting women today. Let's start the show with your host, Karen Pulver.
Welcome, everyone, to Grateful Goddesses. Have you ever made a mistake? Have you ever done something that you just thought, oh no, what now? But after that, you realize, okay, I'm going to work towards doing better. I'm going to have a greater good mentality to help the world by the mistakes that you made. Our guest today is Bob Koch. His bio is that he comes from chaos and noise in his early years. The same stayed with him as an early adult, carrying him through the majority of his life. Bob, welcome to Grateful Goddesses, along with our featured goddesses today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Tell us what that means. You come from chaos and noise in your early years.
I suffered from learning disabilities when I was very young. And in fact, I could not read until I was in the 5th grade. I basically, to put it in very mild terms, faked the funk to get through kindergarten, developed very bad behavior with respect to, in an attempt to get a passing grade. I would, look at other kids' papers next to me when we were testing, things like that. And that led to, I went to parochial school. And that led to, I was beaten at least every few days by teachers, nuns. And it just continued because I could not figure out what was wrong. They did not know what ADHD was. They did not know what dyslexia was, any of it. And they just said, he's lazy. Smack him around, he'll come around. And I didn't really come around. So that's pretty much why I introduced my early life in that way. And
you told me before, did you complete high school or you had dropped out?
No, I completed high school.
Oh, okay.
By the skin of my teeth, but yeah, right. I got there.
Okay, and how do you feel that your background being raised like that and being dealt with in those situations affected you later on?
Well, they're basically survivor skills or survival skills. And developing those traits, I'm going to call them, or behavior patterns early in life caused a lot of problems, a lot of spokes out of a bad wheel, because not only do you continue, or I continued to, try to get ahead. I always felt like I lost something and I've got to do better. And by trying to do better, I would always try to skirt rules and regulations, things of that matter. And that's, I got inventive in my own head. And sometimes you're riding a very fine line. And many times you fall to the left when you should have fallen to the right. So that's what I think that's a fair way to explain it.
So Camille has some questions for you about that, falling to the left.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know that we had seen your bio and saw that you had learning disabilities. And what's interesting to me is I'm also ADHD and dyslexic, and wonder when you say about falling to the left or to the right, if it wasn't for maybe being, I was diagnosed late in college, but it was still a matter of I wonder if you were given the right opportunities, if you would have kept making those same choices, and what I mean, because it takes a lot of intelligence even to be a criminal, right? So it's like, what made you decide to go that direction instead of try to use it for maybe, well, to quote your name of your show, for the greater good in that sense?
Well, it's not, let me kind of explain and maybe even delve into your question before answering it. Because not everything that I did on a daily basis was to skirt the law or try to, get ahead. I've had some wonderful and joyous moments in my life. To give you an example, I was charged with wire fraud back in 2000. No, it was actually 1999, and I was brokering loans to a company called Household Finance. Now, if you had a pulse and a deed, they would give you $30,000 in 10 minutes, as long as you provided them with certain information, and they were called investor loans. So I had a number of properties that I bought for pennies on a dollar from tax lien sales. And what I was doing, they needed W-2s and things like that. So I just thought to myself, convinced myself that, it's real property. There's never going to be there's never going to be a theft, because they could always foreclose on the properties. But what I did was I would put together the W-2s, which were bogus. They approved the loans. I would fix the houses in a matter of months and pay the loans off. I still got charged with wire fraud, because that, that was wrong. I mean, but I was able, I figured in my head, no harm, no foul. And the no harm, no foul, even though you're doing things wrong, doesn't leave you right away. It's, once again, it was always in my head to play catch up with my own self, not realizing that it may impact on the economy, it may impact on other people, things of that nature. Once again, there was no loss, but it was that type of thing. I was always looking. It just gets embedded in you. I know people like me, and I didn't reach my epiphany until I was in my early 40s. And I remember the day that this all came flooding into my head. It was like opening a book that had been sealed. And I finally understood, I'm going to say that, I'm not going to like the way I say it, but how to behave. Why I should be following the rules and regulations of life. But then it comes down to application. You've been doing something for so long, it's just there, it's part of you. And I worked it all out. And what happened in 2013, I was arrested by the Sussex County prosecutor here in New Jersey for what they call theft of immovable property. I'm an expert in mortgage law, tax lien law. I'm not an attorney. But what I was doing, I found fatal flaws in mortgage instruments when the economy tanked in 2008, and I made a fortune. It was all legit. It was all completely above board. But because of my past, they arrested me. And even though I sat with the police, and with my background, first thing in your head is you never talk to the cops. I sat down and gave them a tutorial on how I did it, what the statute was, how I acquired it, everything. And they gave me 20 years after I lost trial. And I'm just recapping to keep this short. 14 months later, they reversed it and found no criminal liability in the charges. But it took me 6.5 years to get out of prison. So I kind of, there's a long-winded answer for you. I kind of strayed a little bit, but hopefully that that does answer most of what you posed.
Thank you for sharing that. Alyssa is one of our recovering attorneys here, so I'm going to let her jump in.
Not a tax lawyer, not a bankruptcy lawyer,
Right.
But yes, a recovering one. So here we are. Just sort of take us through. You were given a sentence of 20 years, and you're serving time, and not knowing at that time that you'll get out right in 14 months. I assume you were going through the appeal process. To which, and I want to get back to this later too, but you chose to represent yourself.
Well, no, they made my attorney a witness in the case. And they never called him as a witness, but I decided, you know what? I'm in my late 50s. The prosecutor had told the judge that it was her mission to see me die in prison. With that attitude, I reverted right back to my younger days and said, okay, you want to fight? I'm your guy. And I did pretty well at trial. I filed, the appeal. It took 14 months. In fact, at sentencing, I told the judge the appellate court would make short work of throwing the case out. And man, he blasted me. But it went back. Now, as a recovering attorney, you'll know when they reverse, they remand. They remanded it back to the sentencing court, and the judge would not abide by to vacate certain charges. So it had to go back. It took me 6.5 years until I finally got out. They threw the judge off the case, and I finally came home.
Okay, so translating for the non-lawyers, it means that the appellate court said they didn't agree with the sentence, and that should be vacated, meaning it should be thrown out. But you have to go back to the first court, at the first court level, and they have to do the vacating, right? They have to be the one that sort of pulls you out. And they said, no, we're not going to do that. In fact, you continued to serve. So you served for how long exactly before you?
6.5 years.
Okay. So I wanted to get back to a little bit away from the legalese and into sort of the time that you served. And again, all the while you're spending probably a lot of your time on the legal side of it and the appeal and getting out. But tell us more about your experiences there and how it shaped, the work that you do now.
Well, it's when I entered Northern State Prison. It is one of 3 of New Jersey's maximum security prisons. In the years prior to my being incarcerated there, they closed a lot of the mental health institutions, and basically they are still housing a number of people who are mentally challenged, schizophrenic. It is just absolute chaos when you walk in the door. The noise, the staff are just god awful. They do nothing to help you. So getting in there and then realizing that I'm going to be here for a hot minute, I hopefully can find something to do. So to revisit what you had just said about, defending my case in the appellate division, I went to the law library, and fortunately the law librarian read some of the stuff I was briefing, and I was helping some of my fellow inmates on post-conviction matters, things like that. And they asked me to be what they call counsel substitute. Counsel substitute, you've got to be a certified paralegal. I took the test, I passed it. And once you're substitute counsel, you represent inmates who have violated institutional policy at a hearing. Now, that's anything from murdering your roommate, which I defended 3 people on, to spitting on the sidewalk. So I stayed very busy in all this. And when I got in, when I came into reception, the officer that was at the desk was asleep. He's the one in charge of filling out who you are, what's your background, and there's a box there that says religion. He looked at my last name and he marked me off as being Jewish, and I'm Italian, Irish, Catholic. So I didn't even know until the the chaplain came by one day with a yarmulke, and he said, "Here." I said, "What am I going to do with that?" And he said, "Well, you're a Jew." I said, "I am." He said, "By the way, do you want a kosher meal?" I said, "I'm a Jew," because the stuff that they put on those plates are just horrible. So I suffered a lot of prejudice for being Jewish in prison. And
From,
I've always been...
Sorry to interrupt. Prejudice from inmates or prejudice from the guards and,
Guards, inmates, yeah, it's the population there, the Jewish population was the minority. I was looked upon as being different. But fortunately, I was doing very well in my role as counsel substitute, and I really beat a lot of crazy cases. And I started to get a reputation, which brought about people talking to me. And I asked a white supremacist in there, I said, "Why do you hate the Jews?" And as he's thinking that, I said, "Let me know if you heard this one. How come you don't find many Jews in prison?" He said, "Why?" He said, "They eat lox." Boom. Now,
the lox on the, okay.
Yeah, on a bagel. So anyway, that said, he didn't have an answer. And I went back and forth with a lot of people who were in particular groups. All of my roommates were either Bloods gang members, Crips, Latin Kings, or Nietas. And I was able to communicate with them because of what I had done in the prison walls. They trusted me. We had commonality. And when the time finally went by and I actually got out, and it hasn't even been 2 years since I've been home. It's a mess out here. It's just, I said to myself, I said, I lived through, I'll tell you, ladies, I'll be 65 in a couple of months, and I lived through Vietnam, Kent State, all the craziness that this country has endured. I did miss the Civil War, though. And that said, there are ways to communicate and come together. And I did that in the most godforsaken place that offers just the worst in what human beings have to offer each other. It is just, once again, chaos and mayhem. But through that, there is, like I said, there's that common spirit that really, when you come down to it, the biggest question in any language is why. And I learned, first of all, a good trial attorney will never use that word, especially on cross-examination, because it engages your deductive reasoning and it makes you think. It'll take you out of if you're ever in a violent situation, and that 3-letter word means everything. As soon as I hit the why button in there, it just changed everything. And I once again, you guys saw my comedy rap video, Cram Down. Figure, I'm a big goof. Let me put something out there that people at least get a couple of chuckles at. And it's pretty much a good way to have that commonality. If you can make somebody laugh, or at least enjoy a good laugh with somebody, it opens the door to so much more, so much else. So that's, I have 2 kids. They're young men. My oldest boy is 31. My youngest is 21. And they're good kids. I just did a promo for a 9/11 tribute we're doing in New York on several stations. And I quoted Thomas Paine, who said, "If there is war, let it be in my day, so my child will know peace." followed up with Martin Luther King. Let's let freedom ring. If we do not address this today, it all goes bad. I'm a World War II history buff. My dad saw the last few weeks of World War II. And being a phony Jew, you back, how far away are we from, Germany was a civilized society that just went upside down within a matter of a couple of years. I feel this. And I'm passionate about it. So that's it.
So you come out of prison and Donald Trump is president.
Oh, yeah.
The world probably looks very different than, when you first entered prison. And I know that cram down, for example, I know it was sort of a take on a kind of like a bankruptcy term, but you sort of used it in the more kind of vernacular, cramming things down people's throat, right? The sort of more, other meaning of it. And a lot of your work has, and even the comedy, one might say is dark comedy, right? It's political.
Sure.
And so you come out, and I'm just taking the timeline down the road here, and leave prison, and your work now is not only about, the greater good, right? But also your own personal take on how you see the world today. And that might be, comedic to some, and probably others, you start talking politics. It's not like when, 10 years ago you could talk politics in this country and it was a more, let's say, civilized conversation if there were people from different viewpoints, right? Different perspectives. Now it's much more heated. It's people dig their heels in, whatever party they align with. They wouldn't talk politics on this show a lot, probably for good reason. But I just wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit further about, why this work, why in particular. I get sort of, as a Jew myself, I totally appreciate everything that you're saying and what you experienced, and certainly things in the last few years reminiscent of certain attitudes in World War II. I get that.
Yeah.
But I guess it's a very long-winded way of asking, like, why this work? Why, right?
I like I said, it's if we do not get our arms and heads around this, like I said, things. Look at the country of Turkey. Look what Erdogan did. And once again, it's not a political show, and I don't want to get overly political, but these are Turkey was a democracy, and it's just if we go along the route that we are taking, I mean, January 6th was something that never should have happened. The Confederate flag never made it to Washington in the Civil War, yet it was under the Capitol dome in the beginning of January of this year. That frightens the living daylights out of me. As an American, as someone who has been incarcerated, where if I was in the Middle East, would they have just cut my hands off? Screw the appeal. These due process, the Fourth Amendment, the 14th Amendment that allows your rights to trickle down to the states. This all has to be preserved. And this has to be, I'm looking at it from a very unique vantage point. And I need people to understand and see why, what, when, where, and how I want to do this. It's important to me.
That you're getting involved, because I think so many times people who aren't part of a certain group or part of the global majority, I guess there is the new term now, is that allies feel like they have to get permission to get involved or to speak up or speak out. And I love that you're getting involved, but I wonder if you would have felt the same way if you hadn't had the experience of being, I guess, a fake Jew or a temporary member of the minority group. Because, you know, so many times, like after the George Floyd incident, a lot of people's eyes were opened from that. And so for you to have the experience of personally being experiencing anti-Semitism and racism, how do you explain it to others who maybe come from a very privileged perspective and don't always see things the way you've experienced them? Because I know sometimes when I'm talking to people, I'm like, I don't need to explain my humanity or defend how I feel about way other people treat me because of the color of my skin or because of my gender or who I love. So for your perspective, I'm just curious how we can get more people to see how damaging racism and anti-Semitism can be and how we can come together and work against it. Because that's definitely everyone's goal should be that their children shouldn't have to go through the wars that their parents are experiencing. Because my parents went through civil rights. My father was a freedom writer and my grandfather fought in World War II. Yeah. I'm over this. Like I shouldn't be doing the same. I shouldn't have to have these same
exactly. It's 2021 and I get everything you're saying. I'm from Newark, New Jersey. I've been around black folks all my life. When I was locked up, I shared a cell in particular with a young black kid who we just got, to be best friends. He was 23, you know, I'm in my 60s. And we talked about the civil rights movement. We talked about things that he wasn't aware of. And what the black population in prison during those 4 years, it was, you know, the conversations that we had, the questions, the concerns about, you know, what is going on out there. And just this morning on my show broadcasts every Saturday morning on WOR, then it's on the iHeart Radio app, Google Play, all these other places. And in prison in New Jersey, when you have a call out where you have to go to either the doctor, you got a scheduled appointment, something, there's a process where that list is put on the TV every morning. You know, so-and-so is going here, we're having a basketball game tonight, this is going on. They remind the prison population that my show is on Saturday mornings. Now, it's important. I had Bill Baroni on this morning, who is a former law professor. He was a defendant in the Bridgegate case. Bill and I have become friends. He ended up in prison. His case was thrown out by the United States Supreme Court. And I engage a lot of my content. I did a show on sentencing for nonviolent drug offenders. I raised topics about custody, PTSD, all these things. And I got 24 phone calls this morning from guys who are incarcerated who just wanted to share or vent a little bit. And diffusing that, my biggest concern, people get radicalized in prison. You think the rumors out here are crazy to float around in media sometimes? You got to hear half the stuff that goes on in there. And I'm hoping that by communicating to that population, that they have hope. When you lose hope, it's over. So they're communicating with me. And hopefully, Bill and I discussed getting out, what you can do, what you can't do, what restrictions, things. And it's healthy content for a place that just simmers in crap, to put it in very mild terms, every day you're there. Whether you're doing a life sentence or whether you're doing a 3 flat, something like that. I unfortunately have spoken to guys who are serving life sentences in prison that will not take the vaccine because they're hoping they'll get the virus and they'll die quicker. So it comes from that place. It's not a popular plan. People don't, unless you've been there, unless you've experienced this. You know, a lot of women are moms. You know, how do you even think? And I watched the podcast with Heidi Rome. I've had her on the show with her son with autism. She's just a wonderful human being, full of love. Did you ever consider, what if my kid goes to prison? It's a thought that, especially, you know, a mom. That's why I'm involved in this, because it's hard to relate. You know, the people that talk about recidivism, they talk about rehabilitation. They go home at the end of their shift. They don't know what it's like, and it's very different. It's very different. It's a system that is broken. Prison was started where religious zealots, I'm going to say, and I don't mean that in an insulting way, but they figured by spending time alone with God would allow you to become a better person. So they built, the first two prisons were Trenton State Prison here in New Jersey and Eastern Penitentiary. Prior to that, in Connecticut, they used to keep inmates in an abandoned copper mine, and it was making people crazy. This is all wrong. We need prison. Don't get me wrong. There are elements that are very evil, bad people that need to be away from the rest of the general population for the greater good. But in large part, this lock them up and, you know, then bring them out on parole and violate them for whatever reason, send them back, makes no sense. It hurts families. It hurts. It's just, it needs, a lot of this needs to change. And if it doesn't change, that's the festering wound. That is what, you know, when you look at these mass shootings, guy runs into a mosque, another one runs into a Christian church, a temple. I mean, it's all got to stop. And it can. It's not going to be overnight. But that's pretty much it.
Bob, tell us, you're currently the talk show host of The Greater Good Radio with Bob Koch, as you said, is on Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc. How did you start this? And tell us your future plans with it. What do you intend? Like, what's your mission with your current radio show?
Well, I broadcast off of WOR 710 AM in New York City. I had previously been on CBS, WABC years ago with music shows, comedy. And in fact, I got my start as a talk show character by hiding in a locker with a cell phone we smuggled into prison as a call-in comedy host. That's a story. But I enjoy it. Fortunately, the iHeart Media Group is going to take the show national in the months to come. And they are looking. I was at the Talkers Conference, Talkers Magazine, which is the Bible of the talk show industry. They're looking to really change the face of talk radio. And it's not even talk radio now because the podcasts, it's all intertwined. But Hannity got up there and screamed. He said, you know, I don't believe the election was stolen. We've got to stop yelling at people. And I left there feeling pretty good. And I'm cruising through the television. And I turn on his show, right back to the same old crap. So I'm hoping that what they told me at iHeart was that they like the content I'm putting out. I'm not yelling at anybody. I'm not saying Trump is no good, Biden's a communist, Nancy Pelosi wears army boots. I don't know. None of that. We don't do any of that. But we do engage in intelligent conversation, a lot of comedy, because like I said, laughter is everything. And, you know, I'm hoping that this really turns into a career, and that career actually has an effect on our country as a whole, Like I said, the campaign that I have put forward is called We Can Do Better, because we've all got to become better people. It's not the bad guy. It's not that we all have our own subtle prejudices, our ways of thinking that we might not think is insulting to someone else, or, so it's these types of things that I would like to bring awareness to in a very subtle way and make people understand, once again, using the question why.
I wanted to read before we go the last part of your song, A Form of Something. Mm-hmm. Thoughts in my mind, they don't flow, they just grind. Why can't I figure it out? He's running wild, but he's still your child. It's your turn to figure it out. Which really pulls together you and your life and how you have turned a mistake or a few mistakes, and you are doing greater good, and you are turning things around, which is really difficult to do. And I'm sure it's hard because the mistakes keep popping up. He did this, he did that, what about this? And it's hard for people to shift their attitude, but I encourage people to reach out to you and hear your story. How can people do that if they would like to speak further with you or hear what you're working on?
You could go to www.greatergoodmediallc.com. My phone number, which anyone is welcome to call, is 973-900-2831. I'll be glad to talk to anybody about any of this. And thank you so much for having me on. And it was a pleasure meeting all of you.
Well, thank you for your vulnerability, for sharing your story. And we are really grateful for all that you're doing to move forward to create positivity in our world. Thanks. You for joining us on Grateful Goddesses. What do you guys think of our interview with Bob? I thought it went really well, and he's really doing good, based on, what do you guys think?
I thought it was interesting because I can't imagine pretending to be you kind of think of Rachel Dolezal, where she pretended to be Black for years in NAACP. So I just can't imagine pretending to be part of a group that receives racism, especially in prison, like for food. At first I was just like, why would anybody want to put themselves through that? I could understand doing the opposite of trying to pass to have an easier life, not a harder one. So that's where I was just kind of like, whoa.
The fact that, I tried to pull it out of him a little bit, and I think he did, was, to go into prison, what did he say, 6.5 years ago? Or it must have been like 8
years ago. 2 years.
He got out 2 years ago, but he's 6.5, right?
Yes.
So 8.5 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm. He was
Obama's president,
right?
And we are not, the Republicans and the Democrats are not at war with each other, right? Like they are today. And the world was and we didn't have a pandemic, though I know he came out sort of just as probably we were rolling into that 6 months later, but it's a very different place. And for him to really sort of open everyone's eyes to like what's going on, when you live through it every day, it's very different. He also went into prison when social media was not what it was today. And so he has this article that I was going to ask him about, but it was about communication, short form communication, like tweeting and Facebook and emojis and whatever, and how that's like a horrible way to communicate. And so, obviously he's not doing a whole lot of social, he's doing radio.
Right. But before all this happened, we didn't touch on this. And I do want to mention, he is the executive producer of When Comedy Went to School, which premiered January 2021 on PBS. And so he was already, if you watch that's dealing with the Jews who were comedians who couldn't, they couldn't perform in New York. They had to go to the Catskills. And so he already had that mindset of understanding about anti-Semitism. And then for him to then be faced with it firsthand, I find that really interesting. And, it's like I said, if more people experienced it firsthand, they could really understand the impact that it has on people and the ripple effects. So I really do feel what he's doing now is honorable, and it's hard to escape. When we were talking about having him on, I was nervous because I was looking at his background and I was like, oh my gosh, like a convicted criminal. This is our first convicted goddess criminal.
Look, knowingly.
Knowingly. But the whole point is he learned from his mistakes, and he's really moving forward, and I hope he stays on that track. So
that's a good thing, a redemption as well in that sense.
Redemption.
Like, yeah, and we all want it in the cancel culture that we live in now, where people are, and I think it's a accountability culture is what I call it, as opposed to cancel culture. And he's showing that although he did a lot of bad things, or not horrible things, but he did bad things, he's trying to redeem himself for it. He's trying to do better. He's trying to, do all of that. And I think that's the difference between being canceled and not, is that you actually come out of your bad situation to do better. Or in his case, was it? I forgot the name again.
The Greater
Good. Yeah.
So I hope people tune into that. So thanks for discussing, because I got goosebumps, like some of the things he was saying, and thinking about, as a teacher, children who now are diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia, and how much support they're given. And I can't imagine being beaten for that, and how that would affect a human being. So any other final thoughts?
Well, and that's why I wanted to ask more about that, because I feel sometimes when you're labeled with a learning disability, you don't want for people to automatically assume you're bad, you're negative, all the negative stuff with it. So I was curious if that added any pressure to him as well. I mean, obviously he was abused for his learning disabilities, but like sometimes when you're labeled a certain way, it's hard to ever get past that, and that's what he kept explaining, even with his prison stuff. Like it's spiral. They were like, we want to see you die in prison. So I was going to ask, but I knew we had limited time, if he felt like he just still has that target on his back, much like being a minority in that sense, where you're always feeling like the cops are always trying to get you every time you try to do good. They're coming, trying to check behind you. So.
Well, I think he does, but he's learned to shift, and he's really pushing forward. That's the key, is he's really pushing forward on the whole opposite spectrum to do good. And I listened to his radio show, and it is really quite informative, and it's all, about helping society. And I think that's really honorable. So in that regard, I do really respect him for that.
Up next, favorite things. Opening up to happiness and joy.
Welcome, everyone, to Favorite Things, Grateful Goddesses, with our guest, Bob Koch. One of my favorite things that I was inspired by our other featured goddess, Alyssa, here, is my bracelet. It's a Kabbalah band or string, and I ordered it off of Amazon. And it's supposed to help you with protection and feeling grounded. It's supposed to be from Israel, and I don't know if it's fake, but at least I'm thinking about it being real. And you're going to, you tie it 7 knots. You have someone who loves you say a prayer as they tie it. And as you wear it, and it's not needed anymore, it will eventually fall off. And what I like about this is it's not specifically just one religion. It comes with this packet that talks about how it would be used in the various different religions of protection. And I feel like we all need to create boundaries and protect ourselves from any evil out there, and to really move forward with good. So this is my Kabbalah string. Alyssa, what did you bring today?
This is inspired by another featured goddess, Rachel, who's not with us today, but we were together recently, and she was this is my new favorite thing, and I've been drinking them all day. It's just water, but it's flavored in a very natural way. No calories, no carbs, no fat, no nothing, just some natural sweeteners. Comes in all different flavors. I got a giant thing of it at Costco, and it's been so hot and sticky. I'm in Chicago, Bob, as is Karen, and it's brutally humid, hot, and gross here. So Hint water is my plug for the day, and it's helping me stay hydrated.
I have to try that. Thank you for sharing that. And Camille, what did you bring today?
So I just joined this new app. It's called The Balanced Life. And it's really neat.
I just saw that.
You did? Okay. So it's for women, and it has like all these different recipes and Pilates and different things that you can work out together, and like you can create your own calendar and all this different stuff. So I'm I'm still too scared to go to the gym, but I need to get back in shape. Like I'm just so tired of feeling flabby. So this is my new thing that I'm hoping to get me back into shape and on a routine because it's like, it'll remind me to stay with it, hopefully. So.
I just saw that.
And I don't like working out by myself. So,
and yeah, I saw that and I was wondering if it was a good app. So I'll let you test it out and let me know now that you're doing that.
Fingers crossed.
So, Bob, this is like an adult show and tell, if you remember in school,
Sure.
in your show and tell. So it's all about bringing things that bring you joy and sometimes related to the topic, sometimes not. And it's kind of just, things that we love that make us happy.
Sure.
So what did you bring along today?
The Atlantic Ocean. It is church for me. I am very fortunate to live 5 homes away from it. And as soon as I'm done with the other thing I got to do here, I'm up there like a Saturn V rocket. There is nothing better than listening to the seagulls and getting your feet wet and just the comfort that I get from that. So pick an ocean, a sea, a body of water, bottle of water, or anything. And that's, that's what I got.
That is beautiful. And I hope our viewers and listeners are taking in all of our favorite things and perhaps trying some out themselves, whether it be a walk to the ocean, trying a new app that will inspire them, drinking a delicious flavored water, or wearing some protection, or just protecting yourself spiritually. And with that, we'll say thank you again, Bob, for joining us on Grateful God.
My pleasure meeting all of you.
So that's it. Thank you. I'll let you know. I'm going to stay on to read a little more about you.
Okay.
That will be edited in. And thanks, Bob. And then you let me know when you want to interview me.
Oh yeah, no, that would happen relatively quick. Tell your audience my head is not really as big as it looks on the screen. So I'm messing with you. You ladies have a great weekend. And
Thank
You
you.
too. Bye, Bob.
Talk
soon.
Nice
Take
meeting
care.
you.
Nice
Bye.
to meet you.
Bye.
Bye.
Unleashed your inner goddess yet? Thanks for joining us today on Grateful Goddesses. We invite you to visit our website, www.gratefulgoddesses.com, to access today's show notes as well as other helpful resources. Don't forget to leave a review. Until next time, stay strong and empowered to be a grateful goddess.